Kavanaugh dodged a question about why he didn't ask for the FBI to investigate the assault claims. He was adamant, though, in declaring his innocence.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you were grinding your genitals on her. Have you ever ground or rubbed your genitals against Dr. Ford?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you covered her mouth with your hand. Have you ever covered Dr. Ford's mouth with your hand?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you tried to remove her clothes. Have you ever tried to remove her clothes?
No.
Joining me here in Los Angeles, former LA City Councilwoman Wendy Gruhl, KABC talk radio host John Phillips, former Assistant U.S. Attorney David Katz, and also we have CNN senior political analyst and senior editor for The Atlantic, Rob Brownstein. We have Ron with us, I think. Sorry, we also have David Katz as well, sorry. Okay, I want to start with Donald Trump, who was clearly impressed with the testimony from his Supreme Court nominee. He tweeted out, Judge Kavanaugh showed America exactly why I nominated him. His testimony was powerful, honest, and riveting. Democrats' search and destroy strategy is disgraceful, and this process has been a total sham and effort to delay and obstruct and resist. The Senate must vote. So, Ron, first to you. Are there any clear winners or any clear losers after today, or does it simply depend on your politics here?
Look, I mean, I think the evidence moved. The testimony from Dr. Ford was as powerful as anybody could have predicted. And the response from Judge Kavanaugh was, unequivocal, but also kind of off balance in the sense of eliminating any. It was only a couple weeks ago that he said a judge is an umpire. A judge doesn't take partisan sides. And today, I think he chose to try to rescue his nomination by essentially identifying himself as a warrior for one side against the other. It was a very Trump-like kind of political strategy to go after the Democrats on the committee and by extension in the country, or actually overtly in the country, so explicitly. I think it's unprecedented as a Supreme Court nominee, and this is the person who could be the decisive vote on the court on many of the most polarizing issues facing the country, and just an extraordinary way to potentially go into the court on a virtually party line vote after you have, indicated that you view one political party as irresponsible and out to get you. Just an incredible moment, I thought, today.
So John Phillips, before Kavanaugh delivered his opening statement, he said only one other person had actually seen it. I'm wondering, was that other person Donald Trump? Because, clearly it wasn't, but it sounded almost like, as Ron said, this is very Trumpian, almost like the president had signed off on this opening statement. So essentially, it seems like, yet again, as we have with so many Trump appointees, there's an audience of one. The President of the United States.
Well, it's not an audience of one. It's an audience of about 5 or 6, which are the number of U.S. senators who could theoretically flip one way or the other.
But that's another question. I mean, he needs to please Trump to keep on side, but did he work? Did he win?
Well, he definitely did that.
Yeah.
And I thought that the judge was very emotional. He was very powerful. He was very truthful. He was a guy who was sincere. And if you look at the strategy that the Democrats have employed throughout this entire process, their strategy has been to delay, 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 delay. At first, Dick Durbin was saying we should delay this until the new Congress is voted in, because that's what happened when Merrick Garland was nominated. And then we heard, oh, we need to delay it because we're waiting on documents. And then they said, oh, no, we need to delay it until the Russia investigation is over to find out if this president is legitimate. And then at the 11th hour, someone, maybe Senator Feinstein, leaked this information that was given to them in July, and suddenly we have this huge crisis at the 11th hour that we suddenly need to just shut the process down on. The judge was successful today. The vote in the committee will be tomorrow. The vote for the overall Senate will be on Saturday. I suspect he will have the votes. We have a reporter from The Atlantic by the name of Elena Plott, who's reporting that Senator Manchin from West Virginia is indicating that he is going to vote in favor of the judge. So I think that this train has left the station, and it should.
Very quickly, Wendy, on basically judicial nominees usually try to stay above politics.
Yeah, and today, I mean, I think this is why there were a lot of Democrats, even before today, that were not supportive of him. He was not one of those that came in and seemed like he was going to be above all the politics and really be somebody who was going to take each case as it was. That they felt very strongly that his political actions in the past. And I think it is today, he acted, like no one we've ever seen. I think Ron said it right. This is, unseen before, that he was going to stand up there and almost yell and scream and disrespect those senators that were sitting there behind.
I don't think that's disrespectful.
Okay, well,
because if you're called a rapist, then you need to respond with that. If I was called a rapist, I would respond with exactly that.
If you were called a rapist, you would say, I want the FBI to investigate this so that we can...
They don't come up with conclusions. I would want to be able to defend myself out there in front of the cameras.
So, Ron, I just want to bring David Katz in, because David, when you look at these allegations against Kavanaugh and the response that we saw today before the Senate Judiciary Committee, how do you evaluate all of that together?
Well, I think that the witness, Dr. Ford, her only role was to be credible. She was incredibly credible. I think that once she got done testifying, the White House and the Republicans realized they had a huge political problem on their hands. And that was when Kavanaugh came out and was so combative. And, this is not the way to appear in front of any judge in any country at any level. They're the judges.
The judge should know.
To treat them with such disrespect, he would have been held in contempt of court if he had done any of that in his own courtroom, to talk over the judges, to be so disrespectful. It looked very partisan. It looked very combative. And the person on the Supreme Court has to be nonpartisan. That's why people have faith in the courts. When the decision goes against what you believe in, you say, you know what, the goodwill I have in the court, these are some intellectuals trying to get it right. If it's just part of the political spoil system, then the courts start to lose their validity.
Here's a little more from Kavanaugh lashing out at Democrats and on the offensive. Listen to this.
This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups.
So, Ron, are we now in this whole new world for judicial appointments? If you look what happened with Kavanaugh, taking this sort of vitriolic attack against the Democrats, even dropping in a Clinton conspiracy for good measure, is that where we're now heading for these appointments?
It was an astonishing and, I believe, unprecedented moment, at least in modern times. I mean, it's one thing to defend yourself against a specific allegation. It is another thing to basically go onto the court, potentially, on a virtually party line vote, announcing on your way on that you view one party as your enemy. And you believe that they have been conspiring against you. And the shadow that will cast over anything that he does on the court, I think, is just incalculable. And also, by the way, I think one thing that today did was virtually guarantee that if the Democrats win back the majority in the House Judiciary Committee will do the investigation that the Senate Republicans did not. And I would suspect that many of the people who were, discussed today but not summoned will be subpoenaed to testify before the House Judiciary Committee next year. I think that is inevitable. The other thing that I think is really striking is that, there have been 3 polls in the last week showing that college-educated white women are voting Democratic for Congress, planning to vote Democratic for Congress, at over 60%, a number we have never seen. This was a professional white woman giving, as we just heard, very credible testimony. Whatever else you thought, she was credible, she was composed, she was persuasive, and in less than 24 hours, the Judiciary Committee is in all likelihood going to vote to advance the target of that testimony. I mean, you're talking about taking a match and dropping it into what is already a pool of gasoline in terms of the 2018 election with that particular constituency.
We'll get a lot more into the political implications of all of this when we come back after the break. But for now, here's a little more from Kavanaugh trying not to say if he supports an FBI investigation.
Judge Kavanaugh, will you support an FBI investigation right now?
I will do whatever the committee wants to.
Personally, do you think that's the best thing for us to do? You want to answer?
You know, look, Senator, I've said I wanted a hearing, and I'd said I was welcome anything. I'm innocent.
John, why doesn't he want an FBI investigation?
Because this is just another tactic the Democrats are using to delay the process. As Joe Biden outlined during the Clarence Thomas hearings with Anita Hill, that is not the role of the FBI.
No,
the
he's
FBI
not
does not.
Joe Biden said that there will be no conclusive finding by the FBI.
Yes, they said this person said this, that person said that. They don't.
He didn't say it's not appropriate for the FBI.
Yeah.
This is just another delay tactic by the Democrats. The Democrats think that they're going to win back the Senate, and if they win back the Senate, they're going to shut down the process so they can leave the seat vacant until they think that they can win back the presidency in 2020.
Like the Republicans
This vote
did.
needs to happen on Saturday.
Look, that's what the Republicans did in Merrick Garland. In this instance, what it says to me is the Republicans devalue sexual assault victims. If he had committed, if there was somebody who was in the room and said, I saw him commit a murder, we would have the FBI investigate. But they don't value the fact that a woman...
This is an allegation.
What evidence in that instance?
Well, evidence now. Other people come forward.
So, and she, again, she remembered all that happened. And if you are a woman who went through this, I will tell you people who responded to me today on Facebook and Twitter and all that, which was, if you had this happen to you, like I did, not to this extent, but I remember everything that happened when a professor was inappropriate with me. And I remember that. It was almost 40 years ago. So I don't think that it is fair for the Republicans to say, well, we don't really know anything, and we won't go the next step. Why not have the FBI?
David, as a former assistant U.S. attorney, is there enough evidence out there to begin an FBI investigation if the White House wanted it?
Absolutely. The president could order that investigation. Senator Leahy
it would not be unreasonable from what we've heard so far, not just from Professor Ford, but from the others who have come forward.
Right. It would be almost a prosecutorial malpractice in a case like this not to subpoena Mark Judge. And the FBI has other powers. This idea that they would just go out and conduct an interview, one thing, it's a federal crime if you lie to the FBI. So that keeps people a lot more honest than what happened with Mark Judge. He sent in a letter through his lawyer. In the Mark Judge letter, the supposed statement was not even signed by Mark Judge. They talk about a penalty of felony. It's not under penalty of perjury. It's not a declaration at all. Say what you want about Michael Avenatti, and they said everything in the world against him. He had a client who submitted a declaration. Right. Mark Judge never submitted a declaration to corroborate any of that. On top of that, this woman said that she had gone to the store, and she'd seen this man 6 or 8 weeks later.
Which is backed up in his book.
They could go to that market in Potomac, and they could subpoena those records from all those ways back. They could have found the employment records, but no one has the power to do that. The Democrats don't have the power of subpoena because they're in the minority. So this is just a farce that there was a proper investigation conducted.
We are almost out of time for this segment, but I want to give the last word to John.
Yeah, what was the Democrats' response when Congressman Tony Cardenas, a Democrat from right here in Los Angeles, was accused of digitally raping a minor? Well, it's just an allegation at this point. Let's wait until the evidence comes in.
The details already. This is totally separate.
We're talking about the Supreme Court of the United States.
We're talking about a sitting congressman accused of digitally raping a minor.
Okay. Yeah, not a good note to end this block on, but I guess that's where we'll take it from now. Please stay with us, Wendy and John, as well as Ron. We want to look at the political implications. David, we'll talk to you next hour as well.